The Oklahoma Sooners beat the BYU Cougars 31-24. We'll break it all down on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. We're free and available on every platform and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. And Josh, the Oklahoma Sooners came away with a win. It wasn't always pretty and it wasn't always clean, but they went on the road in what will be one of the tougher environments in the new Big 12 against a team that they've never beat and a team that played a much better football game than what they've shown in the past month or so. Oklahoma comes out on top 31-24, and it was a game that had a ton of different storylines in it.
Yeah, it obviously had a number of twists and turns, namely Oklahoma somehow against BYU can't complete a game with its starting quarterback. It just doesn't happen against BYU, I guess. So there's that twist and turn here. But the most important thing is Oklahoma finds a way 31-24. I do feel like coming out of it, we sort of know that OU's just not a great road team right now in 2023. And this didn't play out as anticipated from yours truly and probably plenty of others out there. I thought Oklahoma would kind of roll in this thing. And obviously that was not the case. And a good heaping of credit deserves to go to BYU, who simply, I think, played much better than they had in the past month. And then obviously Oklahoma, the run defense wasn't great. I mean, there were a number of things that weren't great from Oklahoma in this game. And yet the largest factor that rings true is Oklahoma in a game where it faced some adversity, again, losing its starting quarterback, made enough plays to go win and enough timely plays, John.
Yeah, Oklahoma's defense was not good. They allowed 5.7 yards per carry, 217 net rushing yards, according to the official stats. It was a game where even, Jake Retzlaff looked fairly reasonably good as a quarterback. He bought time with his legs, but as you mentioned, when Oklahoma needed big plays, they got it. And it's the thing we've been seeing from this team all year, save for a couple games, is even if the defense is giving up yards, giving up points, they'll come away with a play or two to win a football game, to help you win a football game. Even against Oklahoma State and against Kansas, I felt like the defense, Kansas scored a bunch of points, but at times the defense did enough to give the offense a chance to win the football game. Against Oklahoma State, they held Oklahoma State to, 27 points in that one? That's more than enough for an offense that's top 5 in the nation in points and yards to go win a game. Well, the defense did it again today or on Saturday where, they weren't great. They had some areas where they need to continue to improve, but you get the Billy Bowman 100-yard interception return for a touchdown that was huge. I mean, that was a 14-point swing right there. BYU's driving, first and goal at the 2, about to take the lead, and that completely changes the complexion of the game. And then you have the Danny Stutsman strip sack late in the game. They hadn't really been getting much pressure on Retzlaff. They hadn't had a sack, it seems like, in forever. And then, Kobe McKenzie, just he dives inside, draws the offensive tackle in. Danny Stutzman's free to go and sack the quarterback and knock the ball loose. The defensive lineman jump on the ball, and Oklahoma is able to cash in and go win the game. And just again, key plays in key moments, Oklahoma's defense comes through, and it shows that resiliency, that reliability where it's okay. Yes, we're giving up yards, but you know what? We're going to be ready to go for the next play. Okay, we gave up that play. We're going to be ready to go to the next play. They're not backing down, and they're not giving up just because a team is getting some momentum and gaining some ground on them.
Yeah, they made just enough of those defensive plays in a game that really, as we've discussed, was not great in a number of other ways defensively. I mean, this was a BYU team that came into this thing reeling offensively, pretty hapless, couldn't really run the football all that effectively. Retzloff hadn't done a bunch of positive things, but he looked like a quarterback against Oklahoma that was starting to come of age a little bit in this game. So, probably not great for OU, but OU did find a way to poke a couple of footballs free. And obviously the Billy Bowman play was just gigantic for him to make that play in that moment in this game when Oklahoma had to have it, given the circumstances, obviously that happened offensively, but with losing Dillon Gabriel, it felt like the way the game was going that you were going to need something like that. Well, and Oklahoma got a couple of something like that in this game, but it felt like that kind of game for OU where the first couple of drives, though, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, that Jackson Arnold, of course, showed you late that there's reason to be excited about, of course, I think what we all expected, right? His future and what it's going to look like at Oklahoma. And yet those first several drives were kind of like, uh-oh, is it too much too soon? Is this too big of a spot on the road? Is he not ready? Is this offense not ready to overcome this? You needed some help, right? And Billy Bowman provided that. You got the other big turnover. Maybe you were looking for a big punt return at some point. So Oklahoma needed that type of spark. And again, they got it on the road in what wound up being a more difficult than expected road test.
Well, this team should not have given up 17 points in the first half to BYU. BYU's offense had been terrible. They're one of the worst in the nation, one of the worst in the Power Five. And Oklahoma responded. They responded by only allowing 7 points in the second half, 0 points in the fourth quarter. Yes, the first half was not good, but your defense responded. And that's what you want to see, right? You want to see that short memory. You want to see a defense, battle back and support your offense, especially, like you said, when your starter goes down. The Oklahoma Sooners did just that. I mean, in the second half, they held BYU to 1 of 6 on third down after allowing 4 of 8 in the first half. They held them to 18 yards in the fourth quarter. 18 yards in the fourth quarter. 7 carries for 19 yards. So, things got drastically better for the Oklahoma Sooners when it had to get drastically better. And we'll talk about one of those guys that was key in this one. And we're going to talk about Jackson Arnold and his performance as well, because you don't get there without Jackson Arnold stepping up in key moments. We'll talk about that later in the show. We're going to talk about Danny Stutsman and the legend that continues to grow here after the break. Hey, if you're anything like me and like I was in college, the idea of reading textbooks just kind of gave me tired head. I just struggled to sit and read a textbook, but I also spent a lot of time in the car. I commuted to school. I went, 45 minutes in the car. I would have loved to have something like listening.com. Listening.com is an app that turns academic papers, textbooks, PDFs, websites, and emails into audio so you can listen to them on the go. Instead of sitting at a desk to read, their app frees you up so you can learn from anywhere. It's the best app in the world for listening to academic material. They can read math equations, automatically skip citations and footnotes, and can pronounce difficult technical words. Other features include one-click note-taking. You can click the plus note button while listening, and they put the sentence you're listening to in a notepad. They also pull out data tables so that you can review them visually inside their app when you get a chance. And a lot of students want to jump straight to the results or discussion of a paper. They automatically detect where the chapters are so you can jump around and find exactly what you're looking for. Their users are 50% PhD people, 30% college students, and 20% working professionals. So you can go to listening.com and get great opportunities to just get all this great information in your car, on your runs, wherever you want to go. It's the best place to get all this for you, and you don't have to sit and read it. You can look, you can listen. It's all available to you in the app. So use the link listening.com/locked-on. You'll be able to get your first 3 weeks for free. So go give it a try. Usually it's 2 weeks free, but you get an extra free week when you go to listening.com/locked-on. All right, Josh, let's talk Danny Stutsman, because it came out after the game that Stutzman had been dealing with food poisoning. Brent Venables called it the flu. He had required IV hydration. Brent Venables even said, hey, I don't even know if this guy is going to play. I didn't think he was going to play, but Danny Stutsman was adamant about playing in this game.
Yeah, and obviously makes arguably the biggest play in the game for Oklahoma. I mean, strip sack, fumble, and all of a sudden that's the piece that puts Oklahoma in position with a backup quarterback to go win the game on a short field, right? I mean, that kind of play, again, you needed that sort of spark. So it says a lot about the type of character that I think all of us already knew Danny Stutsman has. But, man, when you're not feeling great, you got to have the IV treatment. And as he said after the game, I don't know if I'm still sick or if I got to go to the bathroom again or what's going on. But this was not an easy couple of days. It was not an easy flight. And yet he goes out there, and what does he do? Again, he comes up with the biggest play that basically sets you up to go win the football game, has the leading amount of tackles in the game for Oklahoma. He was largely himself in this game, right? I mean, and that's kind of amazing when you're feeling that bad to go out and play as well as he did and to lead Oklahoma when it wound up being more of a rock fight than maybe was expected.
Yeah, if that's Danny Stutsman under the weather because of food poisoning and hadn't eaten in 2 days and has the flu and needing IV hydration, like I want to be Danny Stutsman when I'm sick, because like the dude showed up, had 10 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, the forced fumble, the sack, was third on the team in snaps, just behind Woody Washington and Kenai Walker, and come up with 5 Pro Football Focus stops, and was the 6th highest graded player on the defense that day. So just an outstanding performance for him. And, so many times it comes back to your leader stepping up and showing that regardless of the circumstances, you're going to show up. And I think this is what we're seeing building right now at Oklahoma. It's okay. The circumstances aren't great. The outcomes aren't what we're expecting, but our leaders are stepping up, whether it's Billy Bowman or Danny Stutsman or Woody Washington. These guys are stepping up and making plays when they got to make plays, or they're responding in a much better way. Like I mentioned, I mean, the defense only allowed 17 yards rushing in the fourth quarter, where, for much of the game, it was a struggle stopping BYU's rushing attack. Only 1 of 3 on third down in the fourth quarter. So it was a defense that they responded to the challenge. They stepped up in a situation where they had to step up in the game. And it goes to show that, okay, Brent Venables may not have the complete picture here just yet. They may not be exactly where they want to be just yet, but we're seeing every single week, we're seeing steps in the right direction. We're seeing signs that this thing is heading where Brent Venables wants it to head. He even mentioned, like, after the win, there's a lot of things that they got to clean up. There's things that they got to do better. And he'll be the first to take accountability for what this team has to improve on. And first of all, I love that from the head coach of this team, that even though he recognizes that there's things that they got to do better, he'll first also take the accountability and take responsibility for how things go in a game, whether they go well, whether they go bad. And actually, you rarely hear him talk about himself when things go well, but he will talk about himself when things are going poorly, which, again, a sign of leadership, a sign of accountability. And that's something I think that resonates with the players, that if the head coach is willing to point the finger at himself, then I should be able to do that myself. So again, just a solid win. Was it a great win? Was it one you're going to tell your kids about? I mean, maybe you will, because you beat BYU finally and you beat them with a backup quarterback, but you just got to win. You got to win, early start on the road. That's really the biggest takeaway from this.
Sure. Found a way. And though you didn't get the news you were looking for. Looked like maybe middle of the afternoon you might get that good news you were hoping for with Oklahoma State and Houston, but when it was all said and done, you didn't. Looked like early in the game maybe it was going to be low scoring enough that Iowa State might have a chance to upset Texas. Didn't work out that way, and so we'll see. We'll see if there's any dramatics in this final week that could help Oklahoma, but technically you do stay in the chase, right? I mean, you had to win to keep yourself alive for the Big 12 championship game. So Oklahoma got that piece accomplished, and now they turn it to a short week in the Black Friday game versus TCU. So they did just enough. This game, I think, made again very clear that Danny Stutsman and Billy Bowman are two of Oklahoma's best players. And we'll see that there will be respective decisions for both to be made at the end of this season. And probably this is a later show conversation, but how much better Oklahoma would be with each of those two guys coming back. I mean, the Billy Bowman play was just, heroic in this game to go have what I think the 7th all-time 100-yard scoring play in Sooner history. So, I mean, it's rare that those happen. And then Danny Stutsman, what he delivered in this game was, again, it was like knight in shining armor stuff for Oklahoma. So those two guys, clear NFL talents. Clearly to me right now, okay, Peyton Bowen, I think is going to grow into that. There's some other guys that are going to grow into that type of level, I think, down the road, John. But those guys right now are NFL guys for Oklahoma. And if they come back, you think about, okay, what the future could be with somebody like Jackson Arnold next season, as soon as, again, next season in the SEC. But got to enjoy those two while they're here, right? And this was, I mean, arguably Billy Bowman's finest game in the Crimson and Cream.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I mean, he comes up with a huge play. His second interception return for a touchdown, his 5th interception overall, was second on the team in tackles. It was a good performance. You needed him to step up and play as well as he played. You needed that from the whole defense, but Billy Bowman showed up and showed out. Let's talk about the offense, though. We're going to talk about another guy who showed up, was forced into action. We'll talk Jackson Arnold and some other offensive observations here after the break.
NFL season is at full heights, and this episode is always brought to us by FanDuel Sportsbook, where that's America's #1 sportsbook, and you can get in on the action with the National Football League before this season totally crescendos. We're coming down that home stretch, Thanksgiving Day games. Oh, baby, here we go. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. What does that mean? Well, that means a $5 money line bet on anybody and your team wins. That's $150 to you. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now to get in on the action. The app, it's super easy to use, and they've got a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So just about anything you can think of. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get after this NFL season in style. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL.
Of course, I don't have the thing muted. I took a sip of coffee and I did not unmute myself. My apologies. Jackson Arnold comes into the game in the second half. Crazy, because it didn't look like there was any issue with Dillon Gabriel going into halftime, but then you go back and watch just a couple plays before half and he kind of gets slammed into the turf, hits his head pretty hard. Much more understandable. But Jackson Arnold comes in, starts the second half, a little bit shaky to get going, but came through. Again, talking about players that come through when it mattered most. Jackson Arnold did just that.
Pressed into an incredibly difficult situation. He did, again, just enough. Like this game, to me, that's what it was. It was just enough for Oklahoma. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. I said, for my liking, that this game was important in the sense that wanted it to look more like West Virginia, or wanted it to look more like Iowa State or Texas in the Cotton Bowl in some respects, especially early in that game where Oklahoma looks great, right? Convince me that you're great, Oklahoma. You're not good. You're not very good. You're great. Well, they didn't do that in this game. This was the just enough game. But again, in the second half, there were the extenuating circumstances that at least makes sense why you weren't able to separate. And maybe a healthy Dillon Gabriel, Oklahoma does separate in the second half, John, because they forced the 3 punts, came away with a couple of takeaways, gave up just the 1 scoring drive. It was there for Oklahoma to turn the thrusters on and race to the finish line and race away from BYU. But that's not how it played out from a health perspective. Jackson Arnold, we got to see him. We were asking for him. We got to see him. And he needed that run game with Gavin Sawchuk to arrive. And it did. Oklahoma found just enough of that late. And then obviously Jackson Arnold makes the big time throw late to ice the thing. That was a really positive sign for him to stand in, deliver, feel the heat of this game, of this moment, things on the line, and is only going to help him. Going forward, that was a massive moment for him to take part of. Really just the entirety of the second half was gigantic for Jackson Arnold and for Oklahoma moving forward, and he handled it just well enough, right, and stood in and made a big time throw late.
Yeah, you talk about coming in off the bench cold, and the last time that Jackson Arnold threw a pass in a game was September 16th against Tulsa. So that was 2 months ago that he had last thrown a pass in a football game. And they did not have near the stakes that this football game had. So to come in off the bench, pressed into a tie game, I thought he played well. I thought he responded well. Are things going to get better and we're going to have higher expectations for Jackson Arnold? 100%. But I think in this situation, coming in at halftime, in a tie game, in Lavelle Edwards Stadium, that BYU fan base, they're a really good fan base, and that's a really good environment for college football. And he did what they needed him to do to win the game. On that final third down, that final drive altogether, I thought was this absolute perfection. Oklahoma gets the ball with over 5 minutes left to play and runs the clock out. Like, that is perfect football. That's perfect execution. Were they getting a bunch of yards? Were they getting a bunch of big gash plays in the run game? No, but they were getting enough yards to get first downs and killing the clock. Like, that was absolutely perfect game management and situational management, and that's what you love to see. Is okay, can you take 5 minutes off the clock to go win the football game? And they did that. This was the issue we saw a few weeks back against Kansas. They found a way and figured out a way to go do that. Jackson Arnold had a nice little run on, I think it was a 2nd and 5, where first he jukes a guy out and then second just wills himself to the first down marker. And then on the third down play, he checks to the slants call. If you go back and listen to Jeff Levy's interview, Brent Venables, Jaden Gibson, from what I understand, that was going to be a pass play. Either a deep pass to the sticks to get the first down, or to what they checked to was a slant call. And Brent Venables said it best after the post game. He said, we've learned. I think we all learned from that Kansas game that, one, you don't sit and leave about 2 minutes on the clock, regardless of how many timeouts the opposing team has. 2 minutes in college football is an eternity, even if your opponent has no timeouts. No, you go win the football game, and they did just that. And credit, it's a credit to the coaching staff, willing to acknowledge that, okay, we might have done some things poorly in the past, but we're going to correct it and we're going to do better. It's a credit to Jeff Levy for giving his true freshman quarterback, playing his first half of meaningful college football, the option to audible, the option to get to the line of scrimmage and see what the defense is giving them and check to a play that's going to work better. It's a credit to Jackson Arnold for seeing that the defense was in what they were in and then checking to a better play call and then executing that play call. It's a credit to Jalil Farouk, who again catches that ball, 3-4 yards short of the first down, and then wills himself to the first down marker, getting a little dinged up in the process. So it was a total team effort. And yes, we can talk Jackson Arnold and how well he executed and audibled that, but that's also a lot of preparation that comes from your offensive coordinator. It's, again, learning from a mistake that comes from your head coach. All of it mattered. And giving Jackson Arnold the opportunity to audible there, that comes from learning and it comes from preparation. Because if Jackson Arnold hadn't been prepared for the moment may not have happened.
It's a good point. It's a good point. And obviously, credit to Oklahoma for learning from a mistake against Kansas. It would have been so easy too. And I saw you tweeted this out, I think on Locked On Sooners, or maybe it was your personal account, but you're right. It would have been easy to hand the football off. And given the circumstances, I posted the tweet out on mine, which was, are they going to run or are they going to throw here? Because it would have made so much sense. Young quarterback, freshman quarterback, that situation. He's made some throws, right? But okay, let's chew a little bit more clock, and if we break one and get a first down, great. Instead, they said, no, this did not work out for us against Kansas. We're gonna drop back, we're gonna throw, we're gonna try and go win the game now. And obviously they were able to do that. The other thing I wanted to point out about Jackson Arnold, I said, hey, there were some signs early here that it was like, okay, was this a wide-eyed moment? Was this too much too soon? Really, he gets hung out to dry on the one drive too, because you missed that chip shot field goal.
Yep.
He had the nice throw to Jalil Farouk on that drive that converted the 3rd down and 13 and set you up at the BYU 13-yard line, and you don't get into the end zone from that point. But look, that to me, that's a scoring drive that Jackson Arnold orchestrated that doesn't go down as a scoring drive, but that was a 9-play, 59-yard scoring drive. Next drive, okay, it's one scramble, right? One run from Arnold, sandwiched in between a couple of Gavin Sawchuk runs, and of course the 16-yard tough run from Gavin Sawchuk, which probably at some point we need to just celebrate that individual play from Sawchuk a little bit. That was like, you're not taking me down right here, right now. But so there's a scoring drive there. And then obviously the icing drive. So you had 2 freshman drives, and then the final 3 were, pretty good for Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma. So that was a very nice sign for Jackson Arnold and for OU.
Yeah. And just on that Gavin Sawchuk moment, point a little bit, I did not know he had that in him. And I apologize, Gavin, for disrespecting you by thinking you're just a speed guy, because my goodness, man, the toughness and the physicality, the will and the want to just, again, will yourself into the end zone. I was shocked by that. I said he channeled his inner Tawee Walker on that play, because he was not going down. He was going to score. And it was awesome. And Oklahoma's found their lead running back. That's 3 straight 100-yard days for Gavin Sawchuk, and he had several really, really nice runs in the game. I'll have to go check real quick to see how many first down runs he had, and he had 5 runs of 10 yards or more, 3 of 15 yards or more, and 5 that went for first downs. So that's out of 14 carries. Out of 14 carries, 5 of them went for 10 yards or more. That's awesome. That is awesome efficiency from your running back, who just a few weeks back, we didn't know if we were going to get to see him extended playing time at all. But, man, he came through huge. Another one that had a great game was Jaden Gibson, 2 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. That kid, man, he's come on this year. I think Brent Venables talked about him in the postgame as well. Like, maybe last year he wasn't quite ready for it, but he's made the improvements and he's shown out this year. And the future is very, very bright for him.
Yeah, it's one of those young players for Oklahoma that's obviously going to blossom and has this season, but will continue to into next, that excites you about what their potential is for this program as it transitions into the SEC. And, here's the other thing in closing is, now you got a chance. We said coming out of the back-to-back losses to Kansas and Oklahoma State, win these final 3 games. Make it a double figures win season. Let the chips fall elsewhere where they may for the Big 12 championship game, but don't make this a totally disappointing season. And for some, they're going to be, to some degree, lamenting, hey, what the heck happened in Lawrence and in Stillwater? But you can't change that, right? You can't go back and fix those. There's no do-over button. So the only thing Oklahoma could do is win these final 3 games. And if you got to the Big 12 championship game, great. And if not, then go win a bowl game. So 2 legs of the now 3-leg race are complete, and ding, ding, check, check on the first 2. Let's see if they can close this thing out in the proper way versus obviously TCU.
Yeah, Black Friday affair, 11 a.m. This coming up after Thanksgiving. Hopefully they don't eat a whole lot of turkey and stuffing on Thursday, and they're better better energized and prepared than they were to start this past Saturday. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh, I'm John. Boomer Sooners.